Buddhist Outlook on Daily Life, 9. Nina van Gorkom. 13 Vipassanā. Questioner, in the development of Vipassanā, insight, we learn to see things as they are. Seeing things as they are means, seeing Dhamma and Rupa as they are. Thus, we should distinguish Dhamma and Rupa from each other more clearly. Rupa is that which does not experience anything. Can we say that Dhamma is that which experiences and Rupa is that which is experienced? Nina, you say that Rupa is that which is experienced. Your words imply that Dhamma cannot be experienced. Dhamma experiences not only Rupa but it experiences Dhamma as well. Can you not notice it when there is a happy feeling, when there is aversion, when there is thinking? It is not self who notices this, but Dhamma. Dhamma knows Dhamma at those moments. Question, in Vipassanā we develop awareness. Awareness is always awareness of something. I am not sure that I understand what awareness is. Nina, the plea term sati is translated into English as mindfulness or awareness. These words might create confusion. When we say in conventional language that we are aware of something, it might mean that we know or experience something, but this does not necessarily mean that there is sati. It is, however, not important which word we use to name the reality which is sati, but it is essential to understand its characteristic. Sati is a beautiful mental factor, sopanakata which arises only with sopanasiddhas, 44. Each kusala siddha is accompanied by sati which is non-forgetful, heedful, of what is wholesome and prevents one from unwholesomeness. There are many degrees and levels of sati. There is sati with dina, generosity. When we are generous, it is sati which is non-forgetful of generosity. There is sati with slay, morality. When we abstain from killing, it is sati which is heedful, which prevents us from killing. There is sati in samatha, the development of calm. When we, for example, ponder over the virtues of the Buddha, there are moments of calm, it is sati which is mindful of the object which conditions calm. When we develop Vipassanā, there is sati accompanying the kusala siddha, and it is mindful of whatever Dhamma or Rupa appears now, at this moment, through one of the 6 doors. Through mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa we will learn to see things as they really are. Thus, no matter whether we perform dina, observe slay, develop samatha, or Vipassanā, there is sati with the kusala siddha, but the quality of sati is different at these different moments. Question, how do I know when there is sati of Vipassanā? Nina, in order to know when there is sati of Vipassanā we should understand what the object of sati is, a reality, and Dhamma, or Rupa which appears now. Dhammas and Rupas appear one at a time through the 6 doors. They are realities which can be directly experienced. We are ignorant of realities and we do not know the difference between realities and concepts or ideas. We can think of concepts and ideas, but they are not realities which can be directly experienced through one of the 6 doors. We believe that there are people and things which stay, and we do not see that what we take for permanent or self are in reality only different phenomena which are impermanent and not self. We cling to the concept of a person or thing which exists, but what is there in reality? What can be directly experienced through one of the 6 doors? Not a person, not a thing which exists, only different elements which present themselves one at a time through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body sense, or mind, through these 6 doorways. When we, for example, take a loaf of bread, there is usually no development of insight, but we cling to the concept of a bread which stays, at least for some time. Bread is a concept or idea, it is not a reality which can be directly experienced. What are the realities which can be directly experienced? Through the eyes, that which is visible, visible object, can be experienced. We do not see a loaf of bread, but we can think of bread because of remembrance of past experiences. The seeing of visible object conditions the thinking of the concept of bread. Through the eyes appears only visible object. Seeing sees visible object. Visible object and seeing are realities which can be known by right understanding. When we touch the loaf of bread, tangible object can be experienced through the body sense, namely, hardness, softness, heat, cold, motion or pressure. These are realities, rupas, which can be known by The Nma which experiences these rupas is also real and it can be known by Pa. Through the nose odor can be experienced. The rupa which is odor and the Nma which experiences odor are realities which can be known by Pa. Through the tongue flavor can be experienced. The rupa which is flavor and the Nma which experiences flavor are realities which can be known. Thus we see that there are many different Nmas and rupas which can be known one at a time. We still think, I see, I hear, I experience, but through the development of insight we will learn that there are only Nma and rupa, no self. The Nma which is seeing sees, not self. Seeing arises because of conditions and falls away immediately, although we do not realize this. The Nma which is hearing hears, not self. There are many different types of Nmas which experience different objects. One Nma or rupa at a time can be object of mindfulness, not concepts or ideas such as a person, a cup or a loaf of bread. We use names in daily life which denote concepts and ideas, but we must know the difference between concepts and ideas and characteristics of Nma and rupa which can be directly experienced without the need to name them. Nma and rupa are ultimate or absolute realities, Paramatha Dhammas, which each have their own characteristic. Seeing, for example, has its own characteristic. We can use different names in different languages to denote seeing, but its characteristic is unchangeable. Seeing is always seeing, no matter how we name it. It is Nma which experiences visible object and it can be known when it appears. Is there no seeing now? Hardness is always hardness, no matter how we name it. It is a rupa which can be experienced through the body sense. Is there no hardness now? Thus, we can use different names for Nma or a rupa, but their characteristics cannot be changed. When they appear through one of the 6 doors they can be directly experienced. We can think of concepts and ideas, but they are not ultimate realities. When we think of them, the thinking itself is a reality which arises, a type of Nma. It arises because of conditions. Sati in Vipassanā is mindful, non-forgetful, of ultimate realities, of the Nmas and rupas which appear. It is completely different from what we mean by mindfulness or awareness in conventional language. Every citta experiences an object. It is aware or conscious of an object, but not every citta is accompanied by sati. Hardness, for example, can be experienced by different types of citta, but there is not sati with every type of citta. When there is sati which is mindful of the characteristic of hardness, only that characteristic appears and there is at that moment no thought of a thing which is hard or of a hand which touches something hard. A thing which is hard or a hand which touches something hard are concepts we may think of, but at such moments there is no mindfulness of the characteristic of hardness. At the moment sati is mindful of hardness which appears, Pa can investigate that characteristic in order to know it as it is, only a rupa, not a thing which stays, not a self. In the beginning there cannot yet be a clear understanding of Nma and rupa, but through mindfulness of the characteristics of Nma and rupa which appear one at a time, Pa can gradually develop. It is important to know the difference between the moments when there is sati and those when there is no sati. There is often forgetfulness of realities, but sometimes sati can arise. We will learn the difference from experience. After there has been forgetfulness of realities for a long time, sati may arise which is mindful of one characteristic of Nma or rupa at a time. It is not self who is mindful, it is sati. We cannot force sati to arise because it is a type of Nma and not self. It can arise only when there are conditions for its arising. Question: we cannot be aware of Nma and rupa at the same time, but I would like to know how Nma and rupa are related to each other. When there is hearing there is also sound which is rupa. When there is seeing there is also visible object which is rupa. Nina, do you want to have theoretical knowledge of all Nmas and rupas? Or do you want to develop the wisdom which knows from direct experience the characteristics of the phenomena appearing through the 5 senses and through the mind door? There are different levels of wisdom and we should find out what kind of wisdom we are developing. There are several kinds of rupa, some of which are conditioned by kama, some by citta, some by temperature and some by nutrition. There are many kinds of Nma. Nma can condition rupa and rupa can condition Nma in many different ways. Question: why do you use the word condition? Is condition the same as cause? Nina, when we speak about cause we usually think of one cause which brings about one effect. There are, however, different kinds of conditions for each Dhamma and for each Rupa. For example, when there is seeing, the Rupa which is visible object conditions the seeing by way of object. But seeing does not only have visible object as its condition. Eye sense, which is another kind of Rupa, conditions the seeing too. In studying the teachings we will know more about the different conditions and we will see how complex the way is in which they operate each time we experience an object. When we know that there are various factors which condition the arising of phenomena such as seeing or hearing, we will better understand, at least in theory, that seeing or hearing are only conditioned phenomena and that they do not belong to a self. We should know, however, what kind of wisdom we want to develop. Do we want to develop only theoretical understanding of the truth, acquired by thinking about it, or do we also want to develop the wisdom which knows the truth through direct experience? Question: I do not understand the difference between thinking about the truth and the direct experience of the truth. How can we directly experience the truth? Nina, the truth can be known from direct experience, however, it is not self who knows it, but Pa. Pa can directly know different characteristics of Dhamma and Rupa when they appear. When we, for example, are feeling hot, and Sati is mindful of the characteristic of heat, it can be realized by Pa as a kind of Rupa. It is not necessary to think about it. At the moment we think about it or we call it Rupa, the characteristic of heat cannot be known. Only what appears at the present moment can be directly known. Knowledge acquired from the direct experience of realities is deeper than knowledge acquired from thinking. Question: when there is seeing, the seeing is conditioned by the Rupa which is visible object and by the Rupa which is essence. Could I experience the Rupas which condition the seeing? Nina, it is important to remember that we can experience only the Dhamma or the Rupa which appears at the present moment. Not the Dhamma or Rupa which does not appear. It depends on one's accumulations and on the development of wisdom which types of Dhamma and Rupa can be directly understood. It is impossible to regulate which Dhammas and Rupas we should be aware of and in which order. Question: is it right that we should not name realities when we are aware of them, since they have fallen away by the time we name them? Nina, is thinking of the name a reality? Does it appear? Question: yes, it appears, it is a kind of Dhamma. We cannot help it that this kind of Dhamma appears. Nina, that is right, it arises because of its own conditions. Do you not think that this reality can be known as well? When there is seeing, the characteristic of seeing can be known. When there is thinking about seeing, there is a kind of Dhamma which is different from seeing. If we try to regulate awareness and think that there should or should not be awareness of particular realities, we do not realize that awareness is in it, non-self. Dhamma and Rupa arise because of their own conditions, they are beyond control. If we try to control Sati we will not know realities as they are. Question: I still think that it is better not to think of the names of phenomena. Am I right? Nina, there is no need to think of their names, the characteristics of Dhamma and Rupa can be directly experienced. But if the Dhamma arises which thinks of a name, we cannot prevent it. Thinking is a reality which has its own characteristic and it can be known too. Question: I have heard that the four applications of mindfulness or satipana are, mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of citas and mindfulness of dhammas. How can I be aware in accordance with the four applications of mindfulness? Nina, there is no need to think of the four applications of mindfulness when we are aware of Dhamma and Rupa. We can develop understanding only of the reality which appears at the present moment. The Buddha taught the four applications of mindfulness in order to show people that all Dhammas and Rupas can be object of mindfulness. This does not mean that we should think of those four applications when we are aware. We cannot control which Dhamma or Rupa will appear, they are in it, non-self. Question: can what we call the ego be the object of mindfulness? In which application of mindfulness is it included? Nina, where is your ego and what is its characteristic? How do you experience it and through which door? Do you experience it through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body sense, or mind door? Question: I can only think of the self but I cannot directly experience its characteristic. Nina: we can think of many different things, but the reality of that moment is only thinking. In the development of insight we learn that what we take for self are only Nma and Rupa which arise and fall away. In reality there is nothing else besides Nma and Rupa. Since there is no ego, it is not included in any of the four applications of mindfulness. Question: what about realities outside ourselves? Can we have wrong view about them? Nina: can you give an example of realities outside ourselves? Question: I mean things such as a bottle, a table, or a chair. Nina: things such as a bottle, a table, or a chair are not ultimate realities, they are concepts we can think of. Because of ignorance and wrong view we take them for lasting things which are real. It is important to know the difference between ultimate realities, Nma and Rupa, which have each their own characteristic, and concepts. What we take for a bottle, a table, or a chair are in reality different kinds of rupas which arise and fall away. Rupas which fall away are replaced by new ones so long as there are conditions for them. The wrong understanding of reality can only be eliminated if the characteristics of Nma and Rupa are known when they appear one at a time through the different doorways. Question: I heard of people who concentrate on the movement of the abdomen. They say that sometimes there is awareness of the arising and falling of Rupa and sometimes there is awareness of the knowing of the arising and falling of Rupa. Is this the right way of developing awareness? Nina: what we call abdomen is in reality many different kinds of Rupa. Sati can be aware of only one characteristic of Rupa at a time. For example, through the body sense we can experience the characteristics of hardness, softness, heat, cold, motion and pressure, but we can experience only one of these characteristics at a time. Question: when we experience the Rupa which is motion, do we not experience the arising and falling away of Rupa? Nina: in the development of Vipassanā there are several stages of insight knowledge, Vipassanā. The first stage is knowing through direct experience the difference between the characteristic of Nma and the characteristic of Rupa, in pli. Nmirpa parakita with makrane. At the attainment of this stage there is no doubt about the difference between the characteristic of Nma and the characteristic of Rupa which appear at that moment. The development of Vipassanā, however, has to continue in order to have a clearer understanding of Nma and Rupa. Only at a later stage can the arising and falling away of Nma and Rupa be known. This stage cannot be attained unless the previous stages have been realized. How could there be direct understanding of the arising and falling away of Nma or a Rupa if the difference between the characteristics of Nma and Rupa is not clearly discerned first? Question: is the arising and falling away of Rupa faster than the movement of the abdomen? Nina: Nmas and Rupas arise and fall away extremely rapidly. For example, it seems that there can be seeing and hearing at the same time. In reality this is not so. Hearing can arise very closely after seeing, but when there is hearing, the seeing has fallen away already since there can be only one siddha at a time. From this example we see that siddhas arise and fall away very rapidly, succeeding one another. Although we know that realities arise and fall away, we do not have yet direct understanding of this truth. The understanding of the different characteristics of Nma and Rupa has to become keener and keener. Only when insight is highly developed can there be direct understanding of the arising and falling away of Nma and Rupa. Question: how can understanding become keener? Nina: only by being aware of Nmas and Rupas when they appear, one at a time. Is there not seeing now, or hearing now? If one tries to concentrate on particular Nmas and Rupas there is only thinking, not the direct knowledge of whatever reality appears at the present moment. Realities such as seeing, hearing, hardness or thinking arise because of their own conditions, we cannot regulate their arising. Should we not know their characteristics? Or should we continue to remain ignorant of them? If we try to concentrate on one Nma or Rupa we are clinging and this will not lead to detachment from the concept of self. Question: it seems that we have to be aware of so many different Nmas and Rupas. Nina: we have to be aware of Nma and Rupa over and over again in order to become detached from the notion of self. It is not sufficient to be aware of only one kind of Nma or Rupa. There should be awareness of whatever reality appears. If there is right awareness, without the concept of self who has awareness, this will be a condition for Pa to gradually know Mornmas and Rupas. There is no self who can control anything. Question: I can see that it is useful to know in theory about the difference between Ma and Rupa. But when we are aware of Ma and Rupa, I am inclined to think that it is not necessary to distinguish between them. I doubt whether that will help us to become detached from the concept of self. Nina: how can there be a precise knowledge of realities if we cannot realize the difference between Ma, the reality which experiences something, feels or remembers, and Rupa, the reality which does not experience anything? If we do not realize the difference between Ma and Rupa, we confuse, for example, hearing, which is Ma, and sound, which is Rupa. When there is hearing there is also sound, but sati can be mindful of only one characteristic at a time. Sometimes there may be mindfulness of hearing, sometimes of sound. If we do not know which characteristic appears, hearing or sound, it is clear that we are still ignorant of the reality appearing at the present moment. Question: the reality of the present moment falls away so quickly, how can we ever catch it? Nina: if we try to catch a reality, we do not have the right understanding and thus the truth will not be known. Realities are experienced through 6 doorways, but if insight has not been developed we cannot clearly know which reality is experienced through which doorway. So long as there is no precise knowledge of the characteristics of realities, there can be no detachment from the concept of self. When insight is more developed, Pa will know which reality is experienced through which doorway. Question: is it difficult to know that a reality is Ma or that it is Rupa? It does not seem very difficult. Nina: you may think that it is very simple to know that seeing is a kind of Ma, different from visible object which is Rupa. But are you sure as to what appears at the present moment, whether it is Ma or Rupa? Is there sati and of what is it mindful? Question: I am not sure about the reality appearing at the present moment. It seems as if seeing and visible object appear at the same time. Nina: awareness can be aware of only one reality at a time. When it seems to us that seeing and visible object appear at the same time, then there is no sati, there is only thinking about phenomena. When one has not yet developed precise understanding of realities, they are not known as they appear one at a time. One may know in theory that Ma is different from Rupa, but that is not the Pa which leads to detachment from the concept of self. The difference between the Ma and Rupa which appear should be known, but we should not try to catch the reality of the present moment. When we have just started to develop insight, there cannot yet be a clear understanding of realities. When there has been mindfulness time and again of characteristics of realities, Pa will develop until it is so keen that we do not take realities for self anymore.